fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
So sometimes Trey Lyle says certain things that I go, I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there. You know, by the way, have you ever seen the movie Office Space, Trey?
Yes. Wait, let me turn my mic on. That would help. Yes.
It definitely would. So it is one of the many great movies that are out there. And let's be real here. When I say many great movies, I don't really have a whole lot of perspective on movies because I'm not really a movie aficionado. But there are some that pique my interest, and usually it's ridiculous, cheesy, often you could call childish humor. And one of them is Office Space. And oftentimes Trey will say things that elicit this response from the boss, Bill Lumbergh, in Office Space.
Ooh, yeah. I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there. And it often happens while I'm listening to the morning warm-up in line with the kids, reading to them on top of this. So I'm not in a position to really comment from 7 to 8 a.m. And I haven't been, motivated enough to leave reviews at Trey Lyle VT or 5-star reviews wherever you listen to podcasts.
I was going to say, you do text me, though. So
I do, yes. I have had a thing for texting you during the show because often it's the easiest way as opposed to chiming in at Ty Tracy 90 or Trey Lyle VT on the socials. So you got to do what you can do. But you had a great point. This is low key. I think that's the phrase they use now. One of the most underrated and maybe the best week of March Madness. Thursday of Conference Championship week. Don't get me wrong. I love listening to March Madness itself on your home for March Madness, the VTR in Sports.
I think if you had to rank days, like if you say Thursday and Friday are two separate, that's 1 and 2, like the first 2 days of the tournament, just because you get the more Cinderella stories. But this could be, I think, a clear 3 because, as I laid out this morning, you get 4 games all day in all 5 major leagues. It used to be 6 with the Pac-12. And you have the A-10 in the quarters. You have the Mountain West also playing. So, like, basically all, like, if you had to rank the top 7, 8 leagues in the country, the 7 are playing games all day. Top 7. Like, I would say the Mountain West is probably the best either Mountain West or the A-10, arguably the best non-P5 conference. And I count the Big East a power conference.
So the other thing to build on this, and Conference USA does it differently, and we discussed this kind of at a micro level yesterday with Richie Longshot.
Well, they technically have 4 games today. Well, it's just 2 women, 2 men.
Well, look, I that's not the complaint that I have. It's more that the men and the number 1 seeds. I would love to see the Sun Belt motto adopted for Conference USA, where the top 2 teams in Conference USA get the buys into the semifinals, making it an easier path to get to the NCAA tournament, because your best chance as a conference is to have your best teams playing for a chance to go to the big dance, because that means if they make it, they might be able to spring an upset or 2 and bring more, as Kenny Powers would remind us,
dollar bills, y'all,
to that particular conference. But the cool thing about this Thursday is, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, for so many of these conference tournaments, SEC is on the side. But the Big East is this way, the Big 12 is this way, the ACC is this way, and the Big 10 is this way tomorrow with the SEC. But 3 of the conferences we rattled off today, the number 1 seeds are playing at this time on Thursday, and Friday is kind of the same thing. So you're getting some of the best teams early. And like today in the ACC tournament, you don't quite know where the motivation level is. Duke, they did enough to beat Georgia Tech. They'll get a rematch against North Carolina, who at this point, I think if they just beat Duke, it's not enough to get to the NCAA tournament, because let's be real here. By the way, Trey, I'm going to break some real news. By the way, our own TJ Wilkerson at TJ_Wilkerson8 on Twitter and Instagram is actually keeping you updated with this. But he mentioned that he spoke with John Shire after the game. And
he said in his press conference.
And Shire said this, that it's unlikely that Cooper Flagg will play tomorrow. And they don't know about Malik Brown, the Culpeper, Virginia native, who has suffered another shoulder injury. I'll go out on a real limb here, Trey.
They're not playing.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was talking to Brian. So it's funny. We'll have Bryan Nolen on in a matter of at 5:30 today, and he is actively on the bubble. His team is in Boise State. And So it's just it's kind of funny because you think about it. Flag probably doesn't need to play till Saturday or Sunday of next week. Basically, the 1-8-9 matchup. Because I'm going to go out on a limb and say Duke without Cooper Flag actually might win the ACC tournament. And they might not even need him the first weekend of the tournament because they're that talented. But they definitely won't need him for the 1-16 matchup. And if they lose to North Carolina tomorrow, I think they're still the number 1 seed. Their only thing they could gain is the number 1 overall seed. And they basically have to hope Auburn. The good news is they would know if Auburn wins or loses by the time they play tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, that you'll know more about that. And you're going to be extra cautious this time of year. That's the one drawback.
Sprained ankles or not, yeah. And so he's not going to play.
No, nobody is. But there are other things that you can look at from Conference USA and the ACC tournaments for this weekend. And we're kind of doing different today in the fast lane. Often it's reaction to a game, but Liberty, first of all,
Virginia
Liberty
plays tomorrow. Virginia Tech are just womp womp.
Look,
shout out to Toby Lawal. Our booty. Shout out to Toby Lawal.
Yes. Virginia Tech and Virginia. We covered them yesterday in the fast lane about how the ACC tournament, their one and done appearances in the men's tournament, reveals where they are as programs and what they need to address going forward. For Virginia, structure the program with a new head coach. By the way, more on that in the Fast 5 at 5-ish. Our 5 ideal candidates for the job. I'll list mine. Trey can add any or nitpick, but that will be a fun thing. But before that, we kind of learned about that. And then Virginia Tech, where Mike Young was pretty blunt that, yeah, we got to get more experience and we just made too many mistakes and it's been a problem. That's code for, you said you were going to equip me with more money. So if you want me back, give me more money, and that will help.
Let's put it this way. They didn't have a go-to guy truly late in games. I said earlier in the year, was Elijah Poteet going to be their closer? Appears that was too inconsistent. The guy that I bet Mike Young wishes he had as his go-to guy late in games, hit a game win, even though he played bad, hit a game winner today for Ole Miss and Sean Padula.
Correct.
So let's I have full faith. I have full faith in Mike Young at this point. I think he's going to keep the young core, add some good go-to scorers, and I think they're going to be. I think they're going to probably be picked 12th next year, like in that range, and I think they're going to be a sneaky good team next year. And it's more my faith in Mike Young.
No, I'm with you on that. And look, we've seen it before. You can turn things around quickly in the ACC.
Look at Louisville.
I was about to say, look at the teams playing tonight, particularly the Louisville Cardinals, who are playing the Stanford Cardinal this evening. Like, that's the example that, they got their work cut. Dude, everybody's got their work cut out for them every year. Like, what are we acting like this is a new thing? I mean, for crying out loud, that's the case. And Virginia, clean slate. I disagree with what Ty had to say that Richie McKay might be a candidate for Virginia. I think they're going in a completely different
Don't
direction.
worry, I shut that down.
Yes, you did. And I think it was very well founded. But to your point about today being a great day, it really is. Today and tomorrow both. And not that Saturday isn't fantastic with semifinals or finals for conference tournaments. And
it's all day.
Some bubble bursters, and you kind of thin it out a little bit. I equate Saturday and Sunday of this week kind of like the entree version of next week. Like Thursday and Friday is the real fun chaos, just overstimulation, wall-to-wall action. Saturday, it's a little more controlled, so you're going to get some dud time frames where there are not a lot of games and there are blowouts on top of that. But as the days go on, the action gets better and better. And the best part, by the way, is at the VTR and Sports app,
you can listen to it while you're working on the yard.
Exactly. So you can still be doing
including
whatever you're doing.
Possibly that we will have the Conference USA final, but it could feature Liberty University.
It very well might, Trey, because if there's one thing to say about the Liberty men's and women's teams, we touched on the women a little bit yesterday because they had already played in the fast lane and we were getting ready for the men's game against New Mexico State. But they took care of business. Like, this has been the theme of the Liberty Flames. And I get the whole, we're going to yawn at what Richie McKay says. The challenges of everything that's going on with this particular team. But the reality is that they've got so much versatility to the Liberty Flames that it sets them up, the men in particular, but even the women, to be able to win in different ways. And Javon Mockmer said this. This was after the win against Western Kentucky this past Saturday. But yesterday is once again another example of how this has come to fruition.
We know that on the offensive end, it can be anybody, any given night. So what we try to, pride ourselves on is on the defensive end, being hard to play against. And getting stops, because if we get stops, then that allows us to get more possessions. So I think on the defensive end, not getting our identity from the offensive end, but rather than getting it from the defensive end.
Look, the credit to a large extent goes to Richie McKay, and we mentioned this before. People kind of poo-poo on them, pardon my language here, but they do. Porter and Matheny.
Okay, Toby
short.
Lawal, calm down.
I like what you did there, Trey. But people give a hard time to Porter and Matheny. And yes, when you have Talon Peter on in place of one of them, you gain size and you gain let's be real here, a better scoring option because he's bigger and he's still very athletic.
And those two were the ones that had to replace arguably the best player in program history in Darius McGee.
Correct.
So, like, again, we go back to the UVA conversation. You're the guy after the guy. You're just in an impossible place.
And here's the thing. You want some culture setters on your program. It can't just be 5-star talent and 5-star players. Here's another example for those that listened last night on the VTR and Sports app. But Rutgers losing to USC despite having what's probably going to be 2 top 5, certainly 2 top 10
The number
picks
2, maybe number 2 and number 3 pick in the draft.
in the NBA draft. You can have talent, but you need role players. Like you literally do need guys that can take on different roles. And the Flames have had that. And
Duke's a perfect example. Like, is the perfect example. They have Cooper Flagg, and that's the big name. But what's another big reason why they're so good is he kept Tyrese Proctor.
yes, very much so. You've got a guy that's an upperclassman. And granted, at Duke, that may mean a sophomore, but you've got that. You've added a Mason Gillis. You've added a Malik Brown, who's an older transfer. And you're not adding them to be the number 1 guy. You're adding them to be complementary pieces. But they've been around long enough to where, certainly, let's be real here, everybody's trying to get money. But it's the whole idea of understanding the money and concept. Zach Cleveland, and again, we're not talking about the money for Liberty players. They have NIL. Are they going to be participating in revenue sharing? It's the smart move. But it's the guys that understand it. And for Richie McKay, there's the whole idea after last year, they finished 5th in Conference USA. And let's be real here. They were short and they were not all that athletic. And it was a combination that was exploited for much of the year. And I think we can say Richie McKay's a really good coach because I go back to this. I think they got more than they realistically could have gotten out of the talent last year. And to their credit, they didn't run guys off. They had some guys that graduated. They didn't add as many younger players, which gave them options by adding transfers. And Liberty did that. But the other thing is they kept the right type of guys around that may not have been the stat sheet stuffers and still had their own limitations as athletes. But they also have the ability to help you out in terms of cultural integration. And Zach Cleveland mentioned this. Again, this is back after the win against Western Kentucky, but what we saw against Western Kentucky kind of carried over last night. It was close somewhat early against New Mexico State last night, but inevitably, as that game transpired, it got out of hand, against UTEP last night. It got out of hand really quickly because Liberty knows how to lock in. And Zach Cleveland mentioned this, and again, it's not sexy, pardon the expression when talking about Liberty, but everybody is on and it gives them confidence. And by being on, it's not necessarily just on as a scorer.
It was one of those games where everyone was on. Even Owen, who didn't score, he was still helping us, dishing the ball, getting we were all kind of playing together. And I think getting to see that before the conference tournament really gives us confidence.
They played like that last night. That's why we played the soundbite from Zach Cleveland against Western Kentucky, because when he said that after Western Kentucky and it gave him confidence, they looked like that. And when Zach Cleveland references Owen Aquino, and how often you hear all these players say, hey, so-and-so didn't score tonight, or maybe I didn't score a lot, but I made an impact in another way. That's a big part of it. Look, I get it. Liberty or wherever. Guys want to get paid. You have to have that part, but you need to have the right vetting process, and you need that. Here's another March Madness example, but the videos come out of Coleman Hawkins, who reportedly got about $2 million a year to go to Kansas State. And he's crying after the loss about how much it hurts. But that's the thing. I mean, I don't know his situation personally. He went from Illinois to Kansas State. Here's kind of the background story on the guy. And he went to a spot where clearly he got the biggest bag, so to speak. But was it really the best setup for him? Did he go so far as to get as much money as possible that he sacrificed a better fit culturally for him and a better fit in terms of the players around him succeeding? Because that's another example. Jerome Tang's a really good coach at Kansas State, but Liberty beat them earlier this year in one of those preseason tournaments. And with all due respect to Liberty, they don't have a guy on their roster who's as talented as Coleman Hawkins or who's as talented as most of the Kansas State roster. but the pieces fit better together at Liberty. And that doesn't mean they're going to win tomorrow in the ASUN tournament semifinals.
I know Kansas State had to deal with some injuries this year too. I think Hawkins missed a couple games. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, he had some and they had those, but there's also the pieces fitting well
You're
together.
right. No, you're making a good, I mean.
Wake Forest today is probably a great example. There was, and I forget who put the quote out about Steve Forbes shouting when Wake was, it might have been David Teal, of course, but by David Teal, Hall of Fame reporter. But
I have a great example for you.
Where they're 2 of 11 from 3-point range and they're jacking up bad 3-point shots. And Steve Forbes is going, what are we doing? Look, they invested in keeping a lot of guys and bringing other guys in with NIL.
Hunter Salas
stayed around. He would have been a first-round pick last year. Efton Reed, the transfer from Gonzaga. But did it not look like Wake was the picture of a team this year where they're kind of tantalizing with potential, but it just never materialized for a tournament caliber team? And they're not going now after a one and done in the ACC tournament. And that's the thing is you need talent and you need money, but it's not the only element now. I get it. Fans are like, we don't have enough money. There's no way. You need money, but you need other pieces that fit in. And Trey, you've got other examples to this as well.
This is a pre-NIL example, but it's my favorite. And it's going to just hit you right here in the heart. LSU signed the number 1 recruit out of in the country.
You really have to go
with
here.
Was Will Wade the head coach then? I think he was. Who? Do you know that guy's name?
I really would rather not revisit this.
Good old Ben Simmons.
Ben
Simmons. I mean, that's a really good example. I bet you he did get a bag. So
Ben Kardashian, wasn't he with one of them?
He was.
We're going with Ben Kardashian here.
Hey man, trust the process.
Oh yeah, that worked out real well.
But you look at
Wake, Rutgers, Kansas State, just this year.
Yeah, those are good examples. Wake's, I wouldn't put Wake in the Kansas State. I think Kansas State, I think they overachieved first couple of years of Jerome Tang. I mean, they were literally like a few moments away from going to the Final Four against, FAU. Yeah, I think that's a solid example. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Like Rutgers is probably a good example of, underachieving with the two really good, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, the two guards that are freshmen that were 2 of the top players. But I think like a good example, and obviously Duke is different, but like even North Carolina, like when North Carolina came back and just reran the Final Four team, and, they were a team that probably didn't properly evaluate their season in terms of, another good example is NC State this year. NC State went to the Final Four, the Final Four, and kind of was like, they thought the 9 games were their season, where really your season was mid, and you didn't make, you lose DJ Burns, who went on a run, shout out to him, but you didn't make, and it's, you want to make an NFL example of this is, does Washington think they're closer to Philadelphia or closer to the Pack in the NFC? And do they make overreactionary moves and not like stay in the proper process because they got farther than they expected because luck went their way? Because in March Madness and in the NFL playoffs, when it's one and done, you're going to have luck go your way. Like even for Philadelphia, for how dominant they were, if the Rams block Jalen Carter on one play, it's a Rams and Washington in the NFC Championship game.
Very true. I mean,
so you need to properly evaluate your season, and I think Duke has done that. I think Carolina's done that to some degree. I think they properly evaluated themselves after the loss to Clemson and how they played these last half of the games. But still, like that's where you can go wrong. And I think to Richie McKay's credit, he properly evaluated his team and made the right adjustments.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much, and all this stuff ties together. And that's one of the general overarching observations for March. But a lot of it is also, when you completely flip a roster, again, you're going to need to use the transfer portal and you need to bring guys in. But if you can't also identify the guys that are your glue guys and they're the right type of motivation, sometimes it's being selfless enough to realize, hey, someone's going to be more talented and they might make more money, but it's better for us as a program and allow the players to be the one to vet that player because they can often sniff it out too. The age connection and spending that time away from the court as to whether the guy is just motivated by money Whether the people around that guy are motivated by money, I put a lot of that on the coaches because they can kind of sniff through what adults are really doing to drive the decision. But understanding that angle is such a crucial component, and it's a lesson for Virginia Tech, which is going to need to use the transfer portal. And let's be real here, as much as it may not be their fault because Mike Young hasn't had money, they have a program, probably because of the resources, taken some swings that have clearly missed. Meanwhile, for Virginia, again, roster construction, maybe trying to create a 2-year plan in a 1-year plan world with the old Tony Bennett system was an issue at times. But they need to find the coach that can also identify how to get those right type of guys and then have the infrastructure to keep them around and build the program up in a more fluid environment than ever before. Speaking of the Virginia Cavaliers, we'll get to that in a moment.
I'm ready for this.
5-ish with our ideal scenarios. But here's the ideal scenario. And you speak of prices going up so often in the transfer market. Prices are going up as well with
You could say
goods.
I was going to say maybe there is a tariff on transfer goods.
Well, there could be, but there's not
the
a
transfer
tariff
portal
at InsaneRadioDeals.com. In fact, it's the opposite of a tariff, whatever that is. It's a discount because when you go to InsaneRadioDeals.com and enter the promo
It's a tariff
code,
on us.
Yes, it is. Promo code tariff at checkout. 25% off the list price of every single item. People are already locking in those Lynchburg Hillcats general admission or reserve seats with a $10 food voucher at InsaneRadioDeals.com. The Yard on 5th Street. It's getting warm outside. You want to enjoy a great dining experience? The Yard on 5th Street. Soul food, as Ty Tracy reminds us, it's real soul food at the Yard on 5th Street. Maybe you want to go downtown after that. Ballad Brewing, that's in Danville, but Three Roads, their sister brewery, is just down from the Yard on 5th Street. Those gift cards are also for you at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Now,
Can we talk about shout out to by the way, best ending this like last set of games. Shout out to Xavier for the half court backdoor cover, by the way, in MSG, because it was a 1.5 point spread and they ended up winning, but Marquette ended up winning by 1 because of a half court heave. So that's shout out to that bad beat.
To those that endured it, hey, I'm one who lucked into just going 500 on my Duke game and alt line with the Cooper Flag injury today.
I was going to say, it's great that one was at MSG and you just hear kind of a roar when that of all the people that might have had Marquette -1.5 or +1.5.
Yeah, that's the thing. Speaking of celebrations, by the way, the Virginia Cavaliers will want to celebrate at some point, hopefully responsibly, so that nobody has to call TrostLaw.com because of an injury in an auto accident, or rather 777-HURT, or visit TrostLaw.com. But to the Fast Five at 5-ish, we go with ideal candidates for the Virginia Cavalier men's basketball opening.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
If you want the complete 180, stylistically and culturally, go with Will Wade. He says, according to reports, that NC State is not where he wants to go. He's holding out for a bigger opportunity. I find that amusing because...
Will, you're not getting Indiana. It's going to Chris Beard.
I think that's the logical scenario as well. From one Power 2 to the other, Chris Beard goes to a big program. If
Once
Indiana
again
wants to win, let's be real here, that's the place that he should go. But for Will Wade, first of all, I think he's a better fit at NC State. I mean, look, he's pushing the limits, but it's legal now. Who cares? But if Virginia wants to go that route, hey, it would be a complete 180. He's pushed the limits in terms of player acquisition, and he's pushed the limits elsewhere. Do I think it'll happen? Absolutely
And he's
not.
coached in Virginia.
Yes, he has. He coached at VCU a long time ago. So he's somewhat familiar with the area. More on that in a moment. Here's a shocker. But I love it. No way do I think it's actually going to happen. Meanwhile, speaking of young up-and-coming coaches, Ben McCollum, who has done a real good job at Drake. I know he's not necessarily the hottest name, and some people a few days ago speculated about it, but
He wins.
He wins. He's won consistently at Drake. He's won at different levels, which is a really big thing. And there are a lot of folks, I'm not a basketball X's and O's aficionado, but a lot of people think he could be kind of the Sean McVay style of basketball in terms of having the right blend of personality, connection, and stylistic abilities that works well in the modern game. I think you're at least worth doing your due diligence to take a swing on someone with that upside, even though none of the proof has been at a larger program. Drake is good, but it's not quite on par with
Number 3.
VCU, Ryan Odom, who by most accounts, including Jerry Ratcliffe, who was with us earlier this week in the Fast Lane, is the favorite. I think he's rightfully the favorite because he's got ties to the area. The style is totally different. It's more of an up-paced style, but it's very rugged and aggressive defensively as well, which I love that blend. It may be a different attitude for Virginia, but I mean, I kind of liken it to maybe a more athletic Bob Huggins at Cincinnati back in the day. I don't know if you'll have quite the junkyard dog rugged players, but it's kind of a lower man's version of that with a little less ruggedness and maybe a little more flash. I like the idea for Ryan Odom in that regard and believe he can be a really good fit at Virginia and justifiably is by many accounts the leader in the clubhouse. Meanwhile, a couple of wild cards in. Number 2. Richard Pitino.
Let's go.
Yes, your guy, Trey. It won't happen.
I'm realistic. That's why I said Richard and not Rick.
I would love to see it. He's got the personality for Virginia. It's phenomenal. And guess what? He's won at different locations. Culturally, probably a stretch. Character-wise, let's be real about the family here. Definitely a stretch. Going from Tony Bennett to Richard Pitino, part of the great moral majority of the Pitino family. But it yield results, and it would rather be entertaining. If nothing else, he'd be great for us in the media. Meanwhile, on to the ultimate dark horse, and it piggybacks off of what Trey mentioned as the potential San Antonio Spurs next head coach when he and Ty discussed it earlier today in the morning warmup. But we've said it before, and I think it could check boxes, both with the DEI side of things.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Outside the box, it will not happen, but I would love it if it did. Dawn Staley. Look, I get she's a woman, and it'd be a groundbreaking move, and Virginia would be embarking on that. But she connects with her players, and Trey, I'll just say this. If there's a women's basketball coach, and more importantly, a female coach, that you would have a tough time standing up to if you're a guy. I don't care what alpha male you are. A take no, you know what?
She would just point to her jersey in the Raptors. She'd be like, "Hey, look, you see that?"
She would do that,
and then she'd be like, "Hey, look, these national championships."
She would just pull her hand out of her pocket and show.
But I don't think she's leaving South Carolina.
I agree with you. I'd love to see it. I actually think it'd be a great experiment. And if there's ever a place to take the leap, it is Virginia. But
yeah,
I'm not holding my breath that it'll happen.
I could make a DEI joke that would be fitting for WIQO, but I will not. I have a wild card name for you.
Go ahead.
Leon Rice. Okay, he is paying attention. That's the head coach of Boise State. Bryan Nolen's in our queue, so I just wanted to see if he was paying attention.
Yeah, he does not want that. But meanwhile, we want his insight and to make fun of him and give him a chance to defend himself. So all of that will come up next. This is the Fast Lane on the VTR and Sports app and 93.3 FM.
Mark Dalton here with Terry Volkswagen. Get ready to fall head over heels for the perfect VW SUV. One size doesn't fit all, though, and that's why Volkswagen has an SUV for everyone. From the compact and affordable Volkswagen Taos to the tech-packed Tiguan and the spacious Volkswagen Atlas. No matter which one fits your lifestyle, you'll love the comfort, performance, and safety. Stop by Terry Volkswagen on Forest Road in Lynchburg or check us out online at terryvw.com. Terry Volkswagen. You'll love our cars.
Are you a property owner looking to maximize your investment? Tired of the day-to-day hassles of managing your rental properties? Welcome to Brownstone Properties, where we take the stress out of property management. From tenant screening to maintenance and everything in between, we'll ensure your property shines.
Hello there.
Visit brownstoneproperties.com and come by our office, 3720 Old Forest Road in Lynchburg.
At the Trost Law Group, the only basis upon which we judge ourselves is by the client's success. Everyone on our team understands our responsibility to our clients, which is why we'll do everything we can to be on top of our game for you. If you've been injured in an accident, you need a team who's focused on how they can benefit you. If you've been injured as a result of someone else's negligence, call the Trost Law Group at 777-HURT. That's 777-HURT. And put us to work for you.
Your home is more than just walls and windows. It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us. Build with experience. Build with quality. Build with Right Choice.
Hey, gang, this is Bud Foster, former defensive coordinator for the Virginia Tech Hokies. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
If last week represented the start of the rest of the NASCAR season, now it's here we go, because not just because Bryan Nolen and Michael Massey of frontstretch.com are going to be out in Las Vegas together this weekend. God help us all. This is the time to invest right now, because, hey, they might be making a lot of money. Bryan, welcome back into the Fast Lane. It's great to chat with you. First time visually getting to see you, although I've seen you many times on social media. But for those watching at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, or VTR in Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube, they can see your gorgeous face. We are
calm down there. Calm down there.
Because I would anticipate your lovely wife is listening in the other room. Is this the start of the rest of the NASCAR season, the intermediates of which there are many of these similar style tracks?
You know, when we finished the race at COTA 2 weeks ago, I asked Tyler Reddick that, and he was like, honestly, the real season begins at Daytona. Like, there's some people that are like, okay, the real season starts at Phoenix, myself included. And then there's other people like Tyler Reddick and even Austin Cindric that were like, no, the regular season starts when we start practice that Wednesday in Daytona. So I think the traditional races start this week, and well, I should say even started last week at Phoenix, heading into Las Vegas. But the meat and potatoes of the 1 mile and a half, the Vegas, the Homestead coming up on Darlington. And then you got the short tracks in Bristol and Martinsville. You're getting some traditional racetracks. So I don't think the real season starts, but I think the traditional racetracks start to come in. And I think what we could see is what we've been seeing at the top, and that is a one certain number 20 car in Victory Lane.
Well, he's a co-favorite along with William Byron at Las Vegas. Byron has better history at Vegas, but I mean, it's hard to discount what Bell has done there in other places. He's showing he can win on other tracks. When you look at Christopher Bell and his early season success, how much of this is right place, right time, which he seemed to demonstrate at COTA and in particular at Atlanta? How much of this is the fact that when you win 3 in a row, even if there's some right place and right time, there's also some domination? And the one where he dominated is Phoenix, which is the championship race. And while it's not quite what we'll see the rest of the year, it's a lot closer to it than the other 3 races that began the year.
Exactly. And sometimes you got to be lucky rather than good. And he was lucky in Atlanta. I think he did have to win. He did have to chase for it. He did have to get past Kyle Busch and then hold on against William Byron and Reddick at COTA. So I do think not that he didn't earn the Atlanta one, but he had to work for it in Austin. And then in Phoenix, he just dominated. I know some people had the option tire, so there was a lot of comers and goers, but he still earned that one, even beating his teammate on that final restart. So he's trying to become the first driver to win 4 of the first 5 points races since 1992 with Bill Elliott doing it. So, I mean, his team is firing on all cylinders. But, I mean, when you head to Vegas, you got to watch out for 2 specific teams. That's Hendrick Motorsports and then Team Penske. Sure, Joe Gibbs, they've been knocking on the door. Bell finished second there in the fall. But, I mean, it feels like it's either Joey Logano, William Byron, or Kyle Larson into victory lane. Alex Bowman's also been into victory lane at Vegas. So I do think he can get that job done. But I do think there's going to be some other contenders come Sunday.
Yes, you do. And we do as well. There are other drivers that are up there toward the top of the leaderboard in terms of the odds. And plenty of people in our own backyard can bet on those drivers. When you look at the drivers outside of, in particular, Hendrick and Penske, which have run well historically at Las Vegas, do you look at Toyota outside of Christopher Bell and the obvious one? Do you look at some other drivers and organizations, whether it's Ross Chastain or even a guy like a Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher with what they've shown? Or do you kind of just stick with the cluster of the big 3 organizations, Penske and Hendrick, but throwing in Gibbs as well?
I think I stick with the big 3. I mean, I would be surprised if let's say Daniel Suarez or Ross Chastain got up there. I mean, it would be interesting. But looking at time and time again, the spring race, it's usually dominated by Hendrick Motorsport. Obviously, Tyler Reddick had a late charge to try and beat Kyle Larson back in March of last year. However, I really don't see anything else. I mean, Chastain did finish 4th here in the spring. So, I mean, but he had to come back after he was involved in, I don't remember what exactly, but he did get something that hindered his performance early in the race. Also, I know you're going to like this, Trey, put your headphones on. Ty Gibbs, he finished 5th last year in here, and he desperately, and I mean desperately, needs a good finish because I don't know if you caught that graphic that NASCAR showed last Sunday, but I mean, his last 8 finishes, absolutely dreadful. So, Ed, your guy, he needs a good finish.
When you mentioned the graphic, I thought you were going to refer to the one at frontstretch.com for the NASCAR mailbox where it just says Ty Gibbs terrible star, and you can't really see the Ty Gibbs terrible start part, and so it just makes it look like he's a terrible star, which, I mean, look, I'm his biggest fan, but I can't deny he's had a rough start to the year.
I was going to ask you, when that Fox threw up that graphic, did you have a heart attack?
You know,
did your wife have to check on you? Like,
I don't know if it would be a heart attack, Trey, because it was truthful. It was more like just the slumped over shoulders look of. Oh,
well, hey,
man,
if you want to hear some positive things about Ty Gibbs, Josh Bilicki said gave Ty Gibbs a lot of praise this week on the Happy Hour podcast.
That is true.
He did. You know, he did it again. Getting my usher on here in the fast lane. Confession. I am working out this morning. And I'm at the gym, and nothing gave me that extra jolt. People are wondering, like, where'd that come from? It came from hearing Josh Bilicki on the Front Stretch podcast talk about how Ty Gibbs, all it takes is one, and then he can win a bunch and maybe even contend for a championship. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. That was the best interview ever.
That's world champion Josh Bilicki. And if you want the context,
we don't need context, right? Not for this one.
Well, it's actually really cool context for Josh Bilicki. We sent the social clip out on Front Stretch social, so at Front Stretch, and then go listen to the whole podcast.
And it is a fantastic interview. I mean, I give Trey a lot of but I mean, he hit it out of the park. It was a home run, a grand slam, whatever you want to call it.
Brian showed up this week for his podcast, and that should be out any minute now.
It should. I can't wait to see it. It'll pop up in my feed, and maybe I'll get to listen to it tomorrow on my workout then. So Ty Gibbs brings us to where we are right now with Bryan Nolen of frontstretch.com. He's at the Bryan Nolen. We're at Fast Lane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. We've touched on Ty Gibbs. Other drivers that have had rough starts to the season, which ones are you going, oh, this could be a real concern? And which ones are you going, hey, it's still early. They've got a real good chance to snap out of this?
I mean, it feels like it's deja vu from last year with Brad Keselowski. I mean, once again, he is in the 30s in points. And I mean, sure, he won that race in Darlington and clinched himself into the playoffs last year. But I mean, it's been a struggle start once again. So I'm going to look at him to see if he can get a nice top 10, top 15. His cool suit failed at COTA, and unfortunately, he had to get some IVs after the race got stretchered off. So I'm glad to see he's doing all right. I think it's a make it or break it year for Daniel Suarez. He needs some good runs. I mean, possibly his next best race to win would either be Mexico City or Atlanta. Trey, correct me which one comes first. I forgot. I know they're both part of the summer package there, but
pretty sure Mexico City because that's on Amazon, and then TNT kicks off Atlanta.
Okay,
but
so Mexico City would be his next.
Don't bank on that.
Okay, well, I'm going to anyway. So I think it's a definite make or break season for Daniel Suarez. So those are two drivers that I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Maybe a surprise, Michael McDowell. He's had absolutely abysmal luck with mechanical failures and then just cut tires. Maybe he can get back into a rhythm. Spire Motorsports they're going all in. I'm very impressed with Carson Nosevar. So those are just three guys I'm going to keep my eye on this upcoming weekend.
So when you look at NASCAR's point standings, they're kind of reflective of what we've seen throughout the early juncture of the year. William Byron's technically in the lead. He won the Daytona 500. Then it's Christopher Bell, who's got the next 3 races all to himself as far as victories over the course of this season. But after that, you got all these drivers that don't have wins. But let's presume Bell and Byron and then some of their teammates at Gibbs and Hendrick, and we'll throw some Penske drivers in there, they're going to win races. Assuming we don't get to 16 race winners, which if you get this dominance, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, the longer you go with this, the less likely we are to get more winners. Which drivers are going, yes, even though we haven't won early in the year, we've had really good points races early and are putting ourselves in a favorable spot where if we don't win, we can count on points to getting us playoff eligible.
I mean, you look at a guy like Ryan Preece, who's been getting stage points and stage wins, just being at the right place at the right time. He's a guy that I'm going to be keeping my eye on midway through the season and be like, those stage points, whether it was at Austin or whether it was at Phoenix, or, I mean, could be even potentially this weekend at Las Vegas if there's like 3 laps to go and caution comes out and they have to come in and something, and he stays out. I mean, those are going to be valuable stage points. And so I wouldn't be surprised if an RFK driver would be up there. I'm looking at a guy like Bubba Wallace, who's in a long drought for a winless streak. He's currently 12th right now. And then you got the guys like John Hunter Nemechek or Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Obviously, we're 4 races in, so it's definitely it's a small sample size. But I mean, spectacular run for them right now on 13th and 14th. And then I mean, looking at guys like Noah Gragson, Daniel Suarez, it's almost in a must-win scenario. They got to get points and they got to get it fast. So we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, looking at guys like Chris Buescher, Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell, the guys that are currently probably in the top 12, they may be able to race for points in the next couple of weeks if they feel like they don't have the car to win or to contend. And that's what happens with stage points and stage racing.
Yeah, it's amazing because the stage racing part can completely change it. And we'll wrap it up on this, Brian. Your colleague at frontstretch.com, Tom Bowles, made the compelling case for ending the stage racing phenomenon that has been in NASCAR. Are you on board with that or not? And because to me, it seems like you can't do it for some tracks and not others the way you can different tires or different setups.
And it was a fantastic article. I read it this morning, frontstretch.com, and it was interesting to see how Tom made the article. He shared the 2025 Cup points using a Formula One point system, an IndyCar point system, and the old system for the NASCAR Cup Series, and every single one would have Christopher Bell in the lead. The current point system has William Byron. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but Christopher Bell has won 3 races in a row and is still not the point leader. I feel like something has to change if you have 3 races in a row won by one person and he is not the points leader. I'm just saying. But I definitely encourage you guys to check out that article. I do feel like something's going to happen, though, Ed, this offseason, whether it's they're changing the playoff structure, whether they're changing the point structure, just because of everything that we saw last year with Joey Logano being the 15th person in points and he won the title, to just all of the shenanigans at Martinsville. I do feel like change is coming. I just don't feel like they had enough time in the offseason. But I do feel like we're going to have some type of change. Now, what type of change is that? I'm not sure, but I do feel like change will be coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting some. It is, like you said, it's a question of what that change will be. The constant is the great insight at the Bryan Nolen on Twitter and Instagram. Part of the Front Stretch Podcast Network. Happy Hour podcast is Trey's. The Bringing the Heat podcast is Brian's. And he's been generous enough to hang out with us today in the Fast Lane.
You are the best. I don't know how you handle Trey on a daily basis, but Godspeed to you, my man. Once again, absolutely uncalled for, Trey.
I was just going to tell you to put 5 on red. Be nice. Okay. You did a great job today, Brian. You did a great job on your podcast. I'm never mean to you. I'm always super nice.
Unnecessary roughness, Trey Lyle.
What? I was nice.
But it's always a pleasure, Ed. Thank you so much. And hopefully I will not lose too much money in Las Vegas. Fingers crossed.
We hope you don't. It is a time.
Bet North Carolina to win the ACC tournament. That's the advice we got.
Well, I mean, that's the one from our on-site reporter, TJ Wilkerson down in Charlotte. Trey and I will be back talking a different tournament, Conference USA, with Jon Manson from SierraBread.com. That, when we return, this is the Fast Lane, VTR and Sports app, and 93.3 FM.
When you're voted one of the best plumbers according to Lynchburg Living magazine, you want to hire the best. Sullivan Plumbing wants the best plumbers to join our award-winning team. Do you have a clean driving record? Do you have at least 4 years plumbing experience? Then you're a 5-star recruit, and Sullivan Plumbing would love to meet with you. Take the first step. Call Sullivan Plumbing in downtown Lynchburg or email sullivanplumbing@gmail.com.
When the thrill of playing ball turns into the agony of a broken windshield or car window, contact Apple Auto Glass. Your local auto glass repair shop on Allegheny Avenue in Lynchburg. Apple Auto Glass provide a professional assessment with the honesty from your neighbors. so you can get back to sharing the great moments this season. The Black Crows, Mount Joy, Government Mule, JJ Gray and Mofro, Need Us to Continue, Paul Cawthon, The California Honey Drop, Larkin Poe. And that's just a handful of acts performing at Floyd Fest 25 Aurora, July 23rd through 27th at Festival Park in Floyd. Ticket prices increase April 1st. So get your tickets now at floydfest.com. Winner of the Best Music Festival, even more acts to be announced soon for Floyd Fest 25 Aurora. So get your tickets now at floydfest.com before prices increase April 1st.
An extra 25% tariff has some people stressing, but not you, because you're shopping at InsaneRadioDeals.com and you're entering the promo code tariff at checkout to get 25% off the list price of every already low-priced item. That includes favorites like B&C Sports gift cards, Fleet v. Roanoke gift cards, Aquatrek Adventures gift cards, Lynchburg Hillcatch general admission, or reserve seats with a $10 food voucher. So enter the promo code tariff at InsaneRadioDeals.com for 25% off the already low prices now through the end of March.
Hey, this is Virginia Tech analyst and former Hokies tight end Mike Burnham. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Business as usual. It sure looked like it. The Liberty Flames carried over that momentum, if that's what you want to call it, or you could just say playing the way they want to play at maximum efficiency against Western Kentucky this past Saturday, with their dominating win last night against UTEP in the quarterfinals, but their first game of their quarterfinals, technically the second round of the Conference USA men's basketball tournament. It's a quirky system. Don't fault us for it. It just kind of is what it is. But it's interesting. That game was close. It was about a 3-point game halfway through the first half, and then the Flames just caught fire and used that surge to dominate over the remainder of that game. Somebody who is down there, our boots on the ground for ASeaofRed.com, but generous enough to also speak with us here in the Fast Lane, the founder of ASeaofRed.com, Jon Manson, with us once again. John, how impressed were you, not just the Liberty win, but the fact that at one point it was a close game, and then all of a sudden the threes started falling. They finished the first half 6 of 15 from downtown, and the Flames stretched it out to a 10-point lead that never got that close afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a flashback to last year. Liberty played UTEP in the same round, the quarterfinals last year in Huntsville, and led by 10. Maybe I think it even got up to 12 midway through the second half last year. And UTEP stormed back and played a little bit of bully ball, got their bigger guards on Liberty's smaller guards down into the paint, and really took advantage of that size differential. And Liberty didn't have much rim protection, unlike this year with Owen Aquino and Zach Cleveland kind of being the back line of that defense, that pack line defense. But, so it was a different story, and it was led by that offense. There was a stretch there in the second half. They made 12 straight field goals, and the 13th shot that they, was the one that they missed that broke that trend. They got the offensive rebound, and Colin Porter got to answer on another bucket. So the offense was playing at the next level, elite level right now for the Flames in Conference USA. You talked about the Western Kentucky win last week, and going back even to Middle Tennessee, and even the Kennesaw State game prior in a loss, they still scored over 80 points. So this offense is working at an elite level. Coach Joe Golding, head coach of UTEP, said in the post-game press conference yesterday that Liberty was just slicing them up, and they tried a few different things on defense, and it didn't matter what they did, whether it was switching every ball screen or not switching. The Flames were just dicing them up, and you have to try to choose what poison you want to take from. Do you try to play off the screen and get the guys that take the backdoor cuts or roll to the basket, or the guys that pop out and hit threes? And most of the time Liberty's putting 5 guys on the floor that can get buckets, and that might not have been something that we said of this team last year, but Coach McKay certainly got a veteran team, a mature team, and they're looking like the favorites down here in Huntsville.
You mentioned the way the Flames have played to look like the favorites down in Huntsville. The other part is this, and we've touched on this often with you on our Monday hits, John, But the Flames embracing the roles that they have, how crucial has that been to the fact that, they touched on this after Western Kentucky. They've kind of reiterated it throughout the season, but that is when guys are not scoring, the fact they still find different ways to contribute.
Oh, 100%, especially in this day and age of the NIL and transfer portal, where players are looking for their first exit ramp to a new destination. It doesn't appear to be the case with this Liberty program. And, Taylon Peter is a great example. And, we talk about him all season, coming off the bench despite being the team's leading scorer. And, he was a sixth man of the year in Conference USA. And honestly, third team all conference. Honestly, in my opinion, he should have been a first team all conference performer. But, that's another discussion. We talked about it a little bit on Monday. But, and you look at him in his game in the quarterfinals in the win over UTEP, he only attempted one field goal in the first half. And even for the entire game, he only attempted 5 shots. And that's the team's leading scorer. But talk about efficient. He made all 5 of those shots, including 4 3-pointers, and ended up with 15 points. So that's just a microcosm of what this team is. And Javon Moffmer, the other Division II transfer to this team this year, is another great example. I mean, he's a guy that's kind of, played in the shadows a little bit, if that's the right way to phrase it, and kind of been the defensive stopper on the wing. But, he scored 19 in a win in the regular season finale over Western Kentucky, and had another double-figure performance in the quarterfinal win over UTEP. So he's another guy that's kind of taking the next step. Seemingly, he's taking that next step here in on the offensive side as the Flames, have kind of moved into postseason play. And like I said, 2 wins away from NCAA tournament.
Jon Manson hanging out with us today here in the Fast Lane from AseaofRed.com. He's at JC Manson on Twitter. I did an InsaneRadioDeals.com fast take on this earlier this week. By the way, the promo code tariff at InsaneRadioDeals.com, 25% off the list price of any order you have when you enter that at checkout. But the fast take that I did was the Flames are not going to publicly come out and say that not getting any real all-conference recognition, at least not to the level that they were worthy of, is not a motivating factor. Do you believe that entirely, or is that more of a, look, they're already going to be focused and motivated, but maybe it does give them an extra spark, not necessarily rah-rah, run through a brick wall and punch, billboards, if you will, but more importantly, the extra focus that they clearly showed last night and would like to show the remainder of this event?
Yeah, sure. If you ask Coach McKay, any of the coaching staff, any of the players, publicly, they're going to downplay that and say that they don't worry about it. They just move on to the next thing. But internally, privately, maybe in the locker room, I'm sure it's been addressed. A little bit of disrespect or slight shown their way. It's a regular season champs, and this is a program that is really under Coach McKay the last 7 or 8 years. I mean, making it to the conference tournament semifinals or making it even to the finals has kind of become an afterthought. And after the first year, last year in Conference USA, where that wasn't the case, they finished with a losing conference record and a first round exit in the conference tournament. Some of that, it's easy to forget that. And some of these new rivalries are beginning to take shape here in Conference USA. They may not, those fans, those teams, those programs may not know completely about the storied program that Coach McKay has built the last 6 or 7 years. And so any little chip on the shoulder the Flames can play with, whether it's a slight from the preseason poll where they were picked to finish 5th, or a slight not getting an all-conference, first-team all-conference performer and no coach of the year, whatever it may be, I'm sure they're using that. But, at the same time, you're 2 wins away from the NCAA tournament, and nobody on this team has played in the Division I NCAA tournament. So that's all the motivation they need. But, yeah, sure, any little chip you can have, I'm sure Coach McKay is using that, trying to push those buttons. And these guys are extremely dialed in and playing their best level they've played all season. We've seen that for, about 3 games in a row now. And we'll see if they can keep that rolling here into the semifinals on Friday afternoon. And Kennesaw State and New Mexico State is the winner. Will get the Flames, and that game's getting ready to tip off here in a few minutes. I'm getting ready to head over to watch that at the arena now.
John, you teed us up for our next question. Is there a team the Flames would rather face out of that grouping, New Mexico State or Kennesaw State?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say with 100% certainty you want this team over the other team. I mean, they're the 4 or 5 seeds. They finish tied in the conference standings in the regular season. So, flip a coin which one you'd rather see. I mean, Liberty did go 2-0 against New Mexico State in the regular season. New Mexico State and Liberty are the top 2 defensive teams in the conference. The Aggies don't really score the ball a lot typically, so that seems to be on paper maybe a better matchup just because Liberty seems to have more offensive firepower, but they can also play a really good brand of ball on the defensive side of the floor. Kennesaw State, we know the history there. They ended Liberty's tournament run 2 years ago in the conference championship game with the last-second free throw for the 1-point win down in Kennesaw. Liberty's last ever game as an ASUN member, and then obviously, they got the win at Liberty Arena on Senior Day just about 2 weeks ago. So those two teams split the season series this year. So, me personally, if I'm a Liberty fan, I'd rather have New Mexico State on the other side, especially with those guards that the Owls have, Simeon Cottle, Adrian Woolley. Those are elite guards in the Conference USA, 2 of the best guards in this league. And, in a one and done type win or go home situation, personally, I would rather not face those 2 guards, just their dynamic ability to put the ball in the basket. So if I'm a Liberty fan, I'm probably pulling for the Aggies, but I might be a little quiet and private in my rooting interest because you don't want to ruffle any feathers, not to no cliche there for the no pun intended there with the Owls, but you don't want to ruffle any feathers of the opposing team. You'll take whoever you get.
Take whatever you can get, and if you play as well as the Flames have, you got to feel good about your chances. We know the chances are good. You'll get great insight at aseaofred.com, which is why you should go there, and JC Manson on Twitter. John, appreciate it. Enjoy the tournament action from Huntsville, and we look forward to chatting again.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon, Ed.
John Manson with us here to wrap up the Fast Lane today. We'll be back recapping the men's game and looking ahead to the Lady Flames action tomorrow in the Fast Lane. Thanks for listening to the Fast Lane on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.